Are you constantly stressed out over your hotel expense behavior? Is that pulling down hotel performance consistently? But expense control is one of the most important responsibilities of a hotel manager. Never mind, many have trouble with it. Are you never able to gauge how expenses increase or decrease in a month for which a P&L is prepared? In this video, I will share simple but powerful ways for effective expense management, ultimately to boost your bottom line. The simple but hidden truth behind what is harming you in this expense management story in a jiffy. This is part 2, and there is a link in the description below to take you to part 1. Let's meet Marcus, hotel manager of Paradise Hotel. In part 1 of the 2-part video series, Marcus learned about expense behaviors, more particularly how variable expenses were affected by occupancy levels. He understood the relationship between occupancy and variable expenses. Many hotel managers do not grasp this powerful relationship. Lower occupancy levels incur less variable expenses than higher ones. Hotel is a seasonal industry, remember, with higher and lower occupancy levels. Marcus learned that you cannot control expenses if you do not know how variable expenses related to occupancy increase or decrease. Marcus will thus be able to understand how expense behaves. Then he could relate variable expense to occupancy levels. Let's use the example of a common expense, guest supplies. This is a variable expense that will behave based on occupancy level, meaning that if the hotel sold more rooms, it will consume more guest supplies, and the expense will increase accordingly. This is a powerful reveal. Marcus now had a way of relating his variable expenses to the occupancy. Let me introduce the most powerful expense management principle, and that is unit costs. But most importantly, Marcus was not using unit costs to take decisions based on variable expenses, which relate to occupancy levels. Let's see how that works with an example. Unit costs reduce variable expenses to a per unit level, meaning you can find out how much you spent on variable expenses for every hotel room sold or occupied. You can then determine whether variable expenses are moving in line with occupancy increase or decrease. Let's use a more specific example. From the table, Marcus notices that when his hotel occupancy decreased from 90% in January to 81% in February and then to 61% in March 2026, the guest supplies variable expense in those months have decreased as well. All seems okay. Or was he missing something huge? Let's find out. Marcus needs to state the occupancy percentage as a number. He finds out that occupied rooms in January, February, and March 2026 at different occupancy levels are as highlighted in the slide. How does this help him? Well, he can now calculate cost per occupied room for his guest supplies. Does that reveal anything? Let's wait and find out. Using the occupied rooms numbers, Marcus calculates cost per occupied room for his guest supplies over January to March 2026. This means dividing the guest supplies in column 2 by occupied rooms in column 4. And voila! What does he observe? Marcus observes that when his hotel occupancy decreased from 90 to 81 and then to 61% occupancy, the guest supplies variable expense decreased as well. But notice the last column. His cost per occupied room has jumped up from $2.89 in January to $4 in March 2026. Something is wrong with his expense control. Marcus's cost per occupied room has jumped up, as I said, from $2.89 to $4, a whopping 38%. He would never have found this out if he had not calculated cost per occupied room. But he begins investigating the reasons why guest supply expenses are going up in unit cost. He needs to rectify this so that his bottom line is not affected any further. But significantly, Marcus was now beginning to take expense estimating decisions based on the new unit calculation. What is the moral of the story? Don't look at total variable expenses. That you may call your vanity. calculate cost per occupied room. That may be sanity, if you want to call it that. But more importantly, looking at expenses in a different way by unit cost analysis help markers. Just looking at total expenses is a blind spot, while you get deep insights by relating expenses to occupancy. And finally, you use cost per occupied room to take successful decisions. Realize that most expenses in the hotel operation are variable expenses. They need to be related to occupancy through calculation of unit costs to effectively control them. Interested in knowing the full truth about expenses behavior? Watch the above video.